House.
Tunnel. House.
Worker. House.
Social. Well, this is some.
Whistle. House and Americans. House. Rest Club. 15 million Americans. Americans. So that's a little house. House.
House Americans. House
Program.
Americans. Little
Program.
Americans. Program. House program.
House.
Program. Americans program.
Program.
Americans program. Americans.
Hospital. Americans. Little program.
Judges program.
Little
Program. House program. Americans. Little
Americans.
Americans.
Search communication. It has an
Program.
Americans.
program. How Americans.
You know,
Americans.
this stuff was
Information house program. House.
our house. Metro
Program. Come to
House Americans.
American.
Thank our program.
Americans.
House. Americans program. House. Americans.
Little of all program.
House. Americans program.
Americans house. Little program. Other little program. House.
Americans program. A little house program. Deny program. House program.
Little program. House Americans program. House Americans house. Little program.